Hey, welcome to everyone to this live at the Nutmeg Tavern, and it's a wonderful Friday here. We're starting to get just beautiful spring weather, and I'm getting antsy to get out there and get going. So, welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern. I am John Townsend, your host. Normally, behind the bar here, fixing us the drink of the week would be Ryan, but he's not here. He's been having he needs a new vehicle, so he's out. He's out in the woods trying to catch a horse or something. He needs some way of locomoting. So Ryan's out working on that, but I still have the rest of the crew here. Aaron is on the console. If there are technical issues, blame him.
No, please don't blame me.
Because there may be the computers and whatnot have been being troublesome today. So Aaron is the one who's at fault. And in the hot seat, in the question seat, is Kyle. He's taking those questions in the chat, and he's making all you guys be not rude and clamorous, or whatever.
A little bit, just a little bit.
A little rude and clamorous is okay, as long as you don't. No, I'm not going to go there. So we have been having just wonderful weather. I'm sure you're probably in another part of the country and you already had spring, or your spring's another 2 weeks away. But here it's warmed up, and outside in the woods outside my house, there's a billion sticks everywhere. All those dead ash trees. A little bit of wind comes and now I've got 1,000 billion sticks, and I don't know what I'm going to do with all the junk that's laying around. But we're going to clean it up so we can make more outside videos. And on that, I have, we'll be starting some more canoe work here, talking about canoe things here like we've done in the past. I've got a second canoe that's getting closer to reality, and a third canoe that giant log that was in the woods that I wasn't able to get out. Well, it's almost ready to come out of the woods. Amazing. So, been having a lot of fun here. We're working on a lot of great projects. So, I think we're ready for a question to get us started. What do you think, Kyle? You got something?
Sounds good. This question says, I was wondering if grits show up in any of your 18th century cookbooks. I know they are a Native American dish, and us Southerners still love them. Greetings from Virginia.
Yeah. You're probably going to start to see that show up in the American cookbooks of the early 19th century. There's so little going on with true American cookery cookbooks that are printed in the 18th century that it's hard to get that. It's hard to find some of those research things. There are a few. I mean, Amelia Simmons. There are some manuscript cookbooks which. That's the place to kind of do some digging on that and maybe find some of those kind of hints to just exactly, where the term grits comes from and how far back they're doing it. I'm sure that, of course, they're cooking grits much, much earlier than we have easy reference to find in the books.
Are there any 18th century English or American recipes for smoked meats? For instance,
Sure.
Smoked brisket.
Yeah, there are lots of references to smoking meats, especially, sides, bacon sides, and smoking sausages, and you get some of those other cuts, and they reference, and generally the smoking, the references to that are actually quite bland, and there isn't a lot. They're kind of expecting you to know what you're doing with that. It's sort of a handed down more of a tradition instead of a very, very specific instruction for, it should always be, your smoking should always be this way or that way. It's more like, yeah, and then smoke this, so there isn't a lot of it can be a little tricky to interpret what they actually meant by that. But they had a lot of use they had a lot of places to do that. They had individual smokehouses, and sometimes they had special spots in their chimney that they would hang things up to smoke. And if you look at these wonderful, say, 17th century Dutch paintings, you'll see like a farmhouse, and it will have all these sort of racks in the upper part of the house. You'll be in the kitchen, a painting of the kitchen, and then you'll see these things just hanging right up there, and that's because their kitchen was always smoky. There was always this high level of smoke up at the top, and so all things were sort of getting cold smoked all the time in their kitchens, and they would just hang it up high and off you go. But there's smoking. It would be just an excellent topic to cover, super in depth, because there's a lot there.
I want to grab some donations real quick.
We
have quite a few. Thank you, everyone. Catherine Reed, thank you. Says thank you and your team for all the hard work.
Thank you, Catherine.
Nutmeg for life.
Says
it's nutmeg time again. Thank you. Nancy Morgan, thank you. And then David Dinelli asks, did most people purchase or make their clothes? And that's all I got right now. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Purchase or making. And, most, say, women of the household were expected to know a certain quantity of being able to make things, even if it was small things, simple things. And then if you're, in a sort of middling economic status, you might make more of those things, and in a lower status, you might make all of your clothing. But that wasn't just for men, or it wasn't just for women. Most tailors, or a lot of tailors, were men. That was now that's a profession instead of just a household thing. And then you would have people like sailors that were expected to be able to do a certain quantity or a large quantity of sewing for themselves. So being able to sew clothing was it was a very standard thing for people to be able to know how to do that. Now, so people are going to be making a lot of their own clothes, but they also bought clothes, a tremendous quantity of clothes. There was a lot of used clothing sale. Today, most people, the prices of clothing is so low in proportion to our standard income that we just go and buy new clothes all the time. Any one of us probably have 10 times more individual pieces of clothing, probably 100 times, some of us, than the standard person did in the 18th century. So they were buying and selling clothing. They were selling just simple, small, tiny sewn things that they would trade back and forth. There was a wonderful memoir, or actually almost a daily diary, of a indentured servant, and he was talking about buying and selling very small things, socks, just hand handkerchiefs and things like that, used. It's just really, really strange when we compare that to today.
So real quick before we get on to other questions.
Yeah.
I got a donation from the NSA.
Oh.
Thank you.
I'm glad they're watching.
Yeah. Someone, I can't find the exact comment, but it went a little something like this. Thank you for the Nutmeg Academy video.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Do we want to kind of talk about
that?
Right.
So let's go ahead and talk about that. We've been looking for a way. We interact with so many different people. And the channel as it stands, we only just have so much room, in the channel. So many days of the week, or so many times we can interrupt people and bring you a new topic. So we're looking for ways to get more in depth with the individuals that we interact with. And Brian Cushing was a perfect opportunity. Somebody that we knew had something more to say than what we can get done in a 5-minute video. So we're experimenting, thinking about ways we can interact more, kind of a podcasty situation, or I don't know. We're still kind of digging into that. But the Nutmeg Academy was our first sort of experiment with that in a video sense, where we could have a deeper conversation with somebody that's in living history, but it doesn't have to be necessarily living history. We're looking at a lot of different opportunities. We probably got a list of 15 or 20 names of people that we want to have these conversations with. So
gunsmiths and blacksmiths, and
whether they're people with some certain kind of specific knowledge or experience. So a lot of that.
Right, and we'll probably do. We're trying to do some Skype calls so we can make it happen, even if we can't physically be with the person. We still want to try to get some of that information out there.
Right. So we've done a lot of investment here in our infrastructure, so we'll be able to do those sorts of things. So that's part of the plans for the year as we're coming up, and we've got lot of things we've kind of, penciled into this year. If we get a third of them done, it'll be a very exciting year. So it's looking like a fun year.
I think we're ready for some more questions.
Alrighty. What exactly was the occupation of a tinker?
Tinkers were simple, generally repairmen for household goods, most of the time cooking implements. So they might fix tinware, they might fix brass things if they happen to have it. They're not necessarily the person you would buy a new thing from, and they were generally wandering from place to place, and quite likely disreputable. But I mean, everybody needs things fixed, right? So they would go around with their little tool set and they would ask if you needed things fixed. A lot like a knife sharpener that would go around a community and then go around to, move on to the next community and go see if there's anything that needs to be fixed. There were certainly several different kinds of professions that were like that. You might not need something fixed in your house all the time, every week, but you would save those things back so that the traveling repairman, or you might have a particular job, he would come into an area and do work for a small amount of time and go on. So he's one of those itinerant workmen who does a certain kind of repair.
Can you do a video on bankruptcies in the 18th century? Would an aristocrat be imprisoned for debt like a poor person?
Well, in the United States or in America, North America, we don't really have aristocrats. Whoops, I was thinking of a movie. Aristocrats. But we certainly have, important people, and the bankruptcy laws and how those were dealt with in the 18th century, both in England and in North America, is so crazy, so different than what we have today, that spelling that out would be a very, very good episode. I would, and that's almost one where I'd really like to find someone who has a real good, grasp on that and bring them on the channel instead of me having to, spend a couple months getting all the really good info.
Yeah, that kind of ties into what we were talking about in the Nutmeg Academy video. The little details.
Right.
Were there pizzas or casseroles in the 18th century?
Pizzas. Certainly not quite pizzas like we think of them. Even in Italy, their pizzas were very, very different in the 18th century than what we would think of, especially in America, as pizza today. I mean, even in Italy, they might not think what we have as a pizza today is a pizza. But they had, sort of in Italy, flatbread type products that they would put oil or cheese. I don't know. Again, not an expert on Italian cooking of the 18th century, but that's apparently a street food of that time period. We don't have anything quite like that, but we certainly have things like casseroles. Sometimes those were even called puddings. Sometimes they were sweet, sometimes they weren't necessarily sweet, but that idea of, a casserole idea, where we're going to put these things together and sort of make a pie without a crust, they did that sort of all the time. Pretty typical.
Let's see. Do you have a source for learning 18th century handwriting, and would women have this skill?
Wow. It's just like you guys are like in my head or something. This is kind of scary. The gentleman, Brian Allison, who did the handwriting, even the handwriting you see here on this Maggie Delaney DVD, inside the Maggie Delaney video, you see handwriting, and those pieces were done. We reached out to Brian Allison he's in the Nashville area, asking him to do some of that for us. He's got this great set of knowledge on that particular topic, and I'm in sort of communication with him right now about setting up a couple of very in-depth, maybe several in-depth videos on handwriting and all those. I mean, there's a myriad of skills that go along with that. So we're on that topic. We will hopefully have that in in the works in the next couple of months. So I'm really excited. He's a wonderful guy to talk to. I spent almost an hour on the telephone with him talking about all the different things we could talk about, and I'm excited about what's going on with that.
And what was the second part of that? I think women being able to.
Yeah, I a lot of women did typical writing. It wasn't like women couldn't write in the 18th century. So I don't know how to go beyond that. I'll ask Brian some of those questions.
What was a favorite rainy day pastime in the 18th century?
Rainy day pastimes. People entertained themselves by reading out loud, doing music, their own music. That's one of these things that's lost in today's world. We expect entertainment to be brought from the outside to us. We listen to the radio, like anybody listens to radio. We go on the internet, we listen to music. We stream movies and television, audio books. We have all these different ways that entertainment comes in and entertains us while we passively sit by. That isn't happening nearly as much in the 18th century. People were expected to entertain themselves, and they would have music within themselves, doing skills, crafts that they were partially money making and partially fun. So those are those rainy day things that they're doing.
I'm gonna do a couple more donations. Thanks everyone.
Yeah,
really really appreciative. So what was the last? Oh, the last one was the NSA.
Yeah.
Cop Cam, thank you.
Thank you.
Back in the 18th century, did George Washington and the gang pre-enact you guys being on YouTube? Yes. I hope so. I hope so.
They had their own tavern weekends, and I'm sure that they...
I'll go on to the next one. Tesseract 14, thank you.
Thank you.
Huge fan. I'd like to know if you know anything about the dawn of the 20th century, 1890 to 1910 off the top of your head. We'll go back to that. I'm going to read there's two more I'd like to get. Nancy Gross, amazing channel. Thank you. Max are cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Max.
I'm at my local 17th century tavern. They only have two kinds of food or drink to offer. What's most likely the two things they're serving? Okay. So let's start with the dawn of the 20th century. Definitely a little after our...
Yeah, it's a lot after our time period, but all these, it's interesting that each sort of little time period has its own flavor. And, some of them are like, well, not so much. And other ones are, oh, that's really interesting. There's a lot of stuff that's happening in the very late 19th century that is very interesting. And I'm always drawn to a certain portion of that very late sort of World War I and what's happening in the early 20s. That time period there, it seems to me that's 1895 to 1915, just sort of there's not a lot that pops out and sticks in my memory for what's really interesting historical things. But that's probably just because I'm too focused on other time periods. Okay, so.
Not much happened during that time.
Yeah,
I think a World War, but
basically nothing happened. I'm pretty sure.
And then, what are the two most likely things that would be served at a 17th century tavern? Okay, I don't know if that's any different than.
Let's pick 18th century because I don't know 17th century taverns for anything. Things that
they're fairly similar.
How about strange things that are served, or that idea that people would sup on nothing but a bowl with breadcrumbs and milk. You're around the table. There's 3 or 4 other guests. You're traveling. You've stopped. You're tired. You're hungry. And here you go, guys. Here's your bowl of breadcrumbs soaked in warm milk. Boy, I am just
yum.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
It's about the company you're with.
Yeah, exactly. Let's hope it's that. And the company wasn't good either. And maybe to drink you're going to have cider. That would be good. Maybe you've got a good cider. Maybe you've got a ropey beer. Maybe you got a beer that's gone really bad. But That's the only thing to drink. That's what you're drinking. I mean, I don't know if we would be all that happy with the service. We might complain about the service we get while we're traveling at a restaurant or, at a motel. I don't think we would complain if we had to travel in the 18th century or 18th century.
No joke. I actually used to do the bread and milk thing when I was younger, and I told my wife, and she's like, "That's disgusting." It wasn't. It was actually really good.
Well, there you go.
But,
See, we have a fan over here.
I think that's all I got for now. I mean, there's a few more, but we'll come back and get some more in a bit. Let's do some more.
Any good sources for cooking on ships during the 18th century? Sorry, both military and civilian merchant ships.
Yes, those sorts of things tend to hide out in journals or memoirs of sailors and travelers. So it's there. It's good. They aren't recipes. They are just descriptions. But the descriptions are really interesting. And I've run into some of those things just recently because it can be difficult to grasp some of those things where you would naturally go to find food things and recipe things. They aren't there for sailors and people that are traveling in odd places, or even something, say, like tavern food, right? Especially simple tavern food. Those can be hard to get, but you're going to get those with those travelers' memoirs and journals. That's where that stuff is hiding out. And so I've got a very interesting shipboard recipe coming up, if I can stand to do it.
If we can survive
yeah,
it.
if we can survive it, it's coming up. It's going to be one of those cooking episodes. Some cooking episodes, they're a breeze. I could research them in a couple hours and do the whole episode in, an hour and a half, and it's no problem. It's simple. And then other ones, it takes you 2 weeks to get up the courage to do it, and you spend several days doing the research, and then it takes up the whole day to shoot the episode. I think that one's going to be like that. We'll see how that one turns out. But I also have been looking at another sailor's memoir from the 18th century, and it's got some really good clues about sailor food also. So there's some good stuff out there.
We're going to have to do that one outside.
Yeah, I think you're right. What I'd really like to do is have a ship galley to do it.
Oh, yeah.
But
Hey, sounds like we need to build another set.
yeah.
Yeah, sometimes videos take a long time, and then sometimes you bake an onion and it goes viral.
Are there any traditions from back then that we still maintain today?
Sure. I'm not sure what's going to pop into my head on that one. I'll hold that one back in the back of my head. We're just going to keep going on that one. I'm sure I've got a great answer on that one.
Oh, man. You often wear a vest that has a very beautiful white and blue leaf pattern on it. Do you sell that, or can I order that one?
Is there one up here?
No, I don't know where it's at. We do still have some of that fabric, and you can order a gentleman's waistcoat in that fabric. You have to ask kind of special for it. It's not a super typical thing, but yes, that is something that can be done. You need to call up customer service on that one, but they can do some special stuff like that. And if they cause you trouble, say, you should talk to John. He said in the live stream. No, you probably shouldn't do that. I'll get in trouble with that.
Let's see. I'm cutting out soda finally this year. Any good summer drinks that they enjoyed in the 18th century besides ale, lemonade, or tea?
Yes.
They lock you down on that question, don't they?
Yeah. You can't use that one or that one or that one. Switchel. You should check out the Switchel episode. That's the one. I mean, after you've locked me out of the other ones, that's water. Water is right up there with people say they didn't drink water in the 18th century, and yes, they did, and it was pretty standard. And some people, that's like they would just breakfast on something as simple as bread and cheese and water. I think Ben Franklin talked about that, like last week's live stream. So, yeah, I can't think of any other great ones off the top of my head. I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay with that.
All right. Did most people have horses back then, or did they usually just walk?
I was actually thinking about traveling earlier, and thinking about as I was driving to Fort Wayne today, or I can't remember. I was thinking about it today, though. Probably multiple times today. And we talked in the past about how clothing was a mark of your wealth in the world. Much more so than it is today. We still have that, of course. Certain people will wear, an obviously expensive pair of shoes or whatever, and they wear those things so people know that they have spent that much money on whatever it is. Sometimes it's because they like that a lot or that they need that level, but many times it's just an outward show of wealth. Good, bad, indifferent. I don't know what to tell you about that, but they very much had that going on with clothing in the 18th century, but traveling in the 18th century is almost exactly the same thing. Just like today, you can be driving around a junky beater car, or you can have something brand new every year, and it says something about you. Again, good, bad, indifferent, it just says something about you. You're communicating not only through your clothing, but through your mode of transport. Very much so in the 18th century, very much so. So somebody's walking, that says something. Somebody's on horseback. Somebody's in a carriage. Somebody's in a carriage that's being pulled by 4 horses. All those things are saying a lot. So, you're in a carriage, your own carriage, not just some old carriage, but your carriage pulled by 4 horses. You're driving a Rolls Royce. You're walking, you're in your beater car, you're on a moped. So all those things are saying something. And all those things are happening in the 18th century. A boy is riding a donkey. A person is walking. Some people are riding horses. Some people are riding really nice horses. So, they're all saying something.
I'm going to do some more donations. We have quite a few. Thank you, everyone. So where did I... Okay, Nostalgia Kalila, thank you.
Thank you.
Turbo Nose, thank you. Love your cooking videos, great channel. Have you considered maybe doing a series on Appalachian or regional life in the 17th and 18th century? We'll go through the questions.
Yeah.
Schubert 1776. Come to Moreland House Encampment in Jamison, Pennsylvania in August.
August in Pennsylvania. Okay.
Write that down. Rich Keggy, thank you. Love this channel.
Thank you, Rich.
And then Tesseract 14 again, thank you.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about currency/coinage, also to a lesser extent, silversmithing of the 18th century? That sounds like a whole series.
Yeah.
So let's start
with
with
the
Appalachian or regional life in the time.
Yeah. That really is to dig in and do that. We really do need to find individuals that have spent years doing that kind of research. They're out there. We just have to connect with them and figure out what that looks like. And each person that we find like that, it's a new challenge to figure out how to bring their story to the channel. For me to individually, dig into each one of those, well, we don't have the budget for that. But sometimes we can find the right expert for those things. But it's catch as catch can. We have to find that person and find the person that has that right set of knowledge and the ability to tell that story. We're looking for those all the time, and I would love to tell that story.
Yeah, and again, that's something that we're hoping to be able to achieve with the Nutmeg Academy. If somebody's far away and we still want to talk.
Right. And the other question is how we bring all these things to the channel, and how does YouTube ever tell you about what's happening? We more and more struggle with the idea that YouTube telling people about videos coming out, it's just aggravating beyond belief. I don't know what the answer to some of that is. I could create lots and lots of content, but you may never know it was out there.
Yeah, it'd almost be easier to manually tell
send people letters. Yeah, there's a new video
letters
out today. Yeah.
Than to get the notification thing right. And then what was the other question? Oh, currency, coinage, silversmithing in the 18th century. That's a heavy topic.
Yeah, it's a giant topic. There's some. We'll look at that. There we go. There's a 18th century coinage right here. the topic is so deep and interesting, and there's politics going on in there. There's commerce. There's these wonderful issues with what's going on with the colonies versus what's going on with the mother country, and then we have this wonderful the economic issues with what these coins mean. Coinage in the 18th century and silver in the 18th century, gold in the 18th century is a complete alien concept to us with the way we have money today. And in fact, they would probably think that our money today was, there's no way it would work because it's all based on thin air and everything else. It's really very, very strange to try to equate what's going on with money and coinage in the 18th century with what's going on today, because they are alien concepts from each other. The idea that we certainly had to deal with a lot of hard currency. Coinage wasn't available in the colonies, and we had to deal with paper currency or bills of exchange, and we even had tobacco receipts that would trade like money. So there's a lot of very, very difficult to understand and complex money issues that are going on all through the 18th century. And it only just starts to solidify and turn into something we can kind of recognize by the time we get to, say, 1800 or so. And then, it starts to kind of gets more typical and more knowledgeable or graspable, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
All right, let's see. Did women decorate their nails in the 18th century at all?
You're out of my realm of expertise there. It would be. I mean, they did a lot of decorating, and they would have little things they would stick to their face, and of course there was a lot of makeup things going on. But I don't recall seeing anything having to do with painting nails. So,
any recipes for 18th century cookies?
Well, if you go into Amelia Simmons's cookbook, you'll see the word cookies show up, and that's because of the German influence there in New York. Cookies, the idea of cookies, the word cookies, that's definitely something that's coming in from German and Dutch cookery and not English cookery. So they had things like biscuits or whatever.
I want to do some more donations. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah. Keep me on my toes. Let's start with I think it's the Julian regulators, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, John, I really like that lean-to building you have in some of your videos. Can you tell us about it? Are you making a video about it soon? I'll answer this one. I was literally working on it right before the live stream, right up until the live stream started. I was cutting it. We're trying to figure out kind of what it is. When we shot it at the time, we shot it a specific way, and since then we've kind of gone, I wish we would have done it a little differently. So we're trying to piece it together.
Retrofit it, yeah.
Yeah, kind of retrofit it. So yeah, there will be something about that video coming out here. I don't know when. No promises on the date.
Soon.
Yeah, soon. Yeah, definitely soon. Teddy the Fourth, thank you. How common was indentured servitude? How did it differ from case to case? I've heard it was as bad as slavery, and I've heard it was just a contract. And then Tesseract 14 again, thank you. One last question. What do you know about books, libraries? Were they very prevalent at the time? So let's start with the indentured servitude. That one's definitely a...
Indentured servitude is going to be a very, very... it's a topic where there are a lot of different experiences that people had in the 18th century and 17th century and 19th century, for that matter. I mean, it's going on for a long time, and there is every kind of experience going on in there. Some of them being seemingly a very kind contract going on. So, it can be as simple as, I was somebody's basically employee for 2 years, and they put me up I had a room, I ate it there. I ate at the family table. I did things for them. And when it was time that the contract was up, they gave me a new set of clothes and sent me on my way so I could, with new skills, so I could get a great job. I mean, as simple as this wonderful thing going on to just the most horrible situation ever, or getting killed in service. So it was all of those, and there were thousands upon thousands of people that were indentured servants through this time period. I had some numbers in my head, and they were kind of I don't know. Those numbers are gone out of my head now, but a lot of indentured servitude that was going on. Undoubtedly, you walk down any street and maybe, 1 in 10, 2 in 10, 3 in 10 might be indentured servants as you're walking down the street. And they would just call them servants. They were, and if you consider what's going on in other parts of culture, it doesn't seem abnormal at all. Take the situation of a sailor that's in the Royal Navy. He might not even have a choice. He might get pressed into service, and then he's there as long as they want him to be there, and he doesn't have any choice. Again, he's getting fed. He's got a place to live. He's got clothing given to him sometimes. Sometimes the money for the clothing is taken out of his pay, but he doesn't have any choice in that servitude. And it is a lot like that. There's a contract, and he didn't even sign it. And military service the same way, in that it's like, once you're a soldier as long as they want you to be a soldier until they kick your butt out. Now, that isn't necessarily happening so much here in North America. During the Revolutionary War, you would sign up for a particular period, or you signed up for the war. Later on, it wasn't like, oh, this is 6 months. You're serving till the end. But those things those contracts are those ways of people working are very similar. And they saw that was not abnormal to them whatsoever in the 18th century. So you can see how they would look at it totally differently than we might today, because we don't deal with that sort of situation.
And then one other thing too, to kind of add to that, with the original question, I think one thing that Carol and Frank and we were very, very careful about not trying to. I mean, it was indentured servitude was a completely different situation than other forms of slavery, and it's something that needs to be told.
Yeah, it's not even other forms of slavery. It's
its own thing.
Right.
It was its own specific thing, and we're not trying to get into which one was worse, which one was. It's a totally different situation. It's just
something that was happening a lot in the 18th century.
Absolutely. And then there was one more question from Tesseract 14. Books, libraries, were they very prevalent at the time?
Books and libraries, both. There, you just start to see the seeds of libraries starting to happen in the 18th century. They're not very, very common. There are people lending books to each other all the time. And then there was this start, I think Benjamin Franklin talks about it in his autobiography, about this idea of, let's put together this library idea where everybody kicks in some money and we hold these books in common. So that starts to happen, but it's actually pretty rare, and only with sort of scientific books there in the 18th century. So I don't know I couldn't tell you the evolution of that as it goes into the 19th century.
I think Kyle can do some more. Sorry, there's just a lot of donations today.
Yeah, wonderful.
Thanks everyone.
Lots of questions too. So
that's awesome. A great chat today. Thank you.
How much food did our ancestors have in reserves in times of possible famine?
Part of this answer tells you get a clue to this about what's happening in cookbooks, what kinds of things they're cooking, and the recipes or receipts there are in the books. There's a prevalence of pickling that's going on. Storage of that type that's going on in the English cookbooks, and there was reference to that. Some historians think that that's a holdover from the famine times or lack of foodstuffs that was happening during the English Civil War in the 17th century. So there's this holdover of sort of famine conditions, and how do we make sure we have food available to us that we can store store in our household in case a situation like this would happen to us. And I think that exactly the same thing is going to happen in the 20th century. So if you're an old person like me, horribly old person, and you remember when households did a lot of canning. And there's still people that do a lot of canning today, but it was much more prevalent in the 70s, in the 60s. And that was because there was a holdover, this generation that lived through the Great Depression. And they knew, it's like, well, we need to make sure that we can store our own food, that we have food stored back. And so that's a holdover from that time period. And I've already forgotten the original question. What was it again?
You need that bartender to rein you in.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, man. Where did it go?
Well, that was part of the answer.
I'm sorry.
My answer got too big.
I got another question.
Oh, good. Hopefully we got there for you.
Where do you get / find your patterns for all the clothes you sell?
Some of them are historical kind of patterns. There are some great books that are available that were available, back in the day. I'm not sure. I think cut of men's clothing, cut of women's clothing, patterns of fashion. There's a couple of titles out there that get you close to an idea. Some books like Pennsylvania Clothing, Rural Pennsylvania Clothing, and other books go through and they look at period garments and they try to redraw those patterns from them. They didn't use patterns per se quite the same way. Well, definitely not the same way we would use clothing patterns. They didn't have the same kind of patterns that we do today, but they certainly had pattern ideas about what these shapes would be like, and then the tailor would work them into a garment for you. We kind of do some of that same sort of situation. So reverse engineering sometimes, or, using documentation that we can come up with today.
Hey, let's talk about those mugs. We got a few left.
So we do have a few. I drank mine dry here. A few of these Nutmeg Tavern mugs still available, and these really cool colors. I'm really actually kind of glad that I got enough this time that they didn't all just, so that if you missed a live stream, you didn't have them available to you. But we do have just a few of these guys left. Black with the blue on top, the Boar's Head Nutmeg Tavern logo on the front. These guys are made in the United States, hand thrown, beautiful glazed job, and they're all signed on the bottom. I don't know, some crazy guy signing them on the bottom, John Townsend. And we also have the chestnut color with this cool green overglaze. Those two are available. I think they hold about 16 ounces. Nice size. I'm really happy to still have a few left. If you're interested in those, there's a link.
Yep, description, and I threw one in chat as well.
Link in the chat. So,
yes, get them while they're still here.
Yeah,
because I'm gonna bet that they will not be here anymore next Friday.
Yeah, they disappear pretty quick.
Were bowls and plates most often made of stone, metal, or pottery?
Bowls and plates. What they're made out of, it's one of those topics that comes up a lot, and they had bowls and plates made of lots of different things, and that part of that is having to do with economic status, cost, durability. So at the high end, you'd have something like a silver plate, very, very expensive, and you would only use that for guests, and you'd take really good care of it, and it was easy to scratch, and you had to polish it. Can you imagine? I can't imagine. You would have porcelain plates, probably next down, beautiful, beautiful porcelain pieces. Those pieces were being imported from, China and that sort of area, probably some other countries too, but off the top of my head. And then it's in the 18th century, it really started being made both in Europe and in Great Britain. They were making China type products. beautiful, beautiful pieces. A little bit of that is happening in North America. Not much of that real high-end stuff. And then there's sort of lower pottery. You get into the earthenware pottery, it's much softer. It's easy to chip and break. This is stuff that's made by the local potter. Definitely a good rung down. Probably above that one would be something like a pewter plate. And then lower down, you might have tin plates, and you would even have wooden plates underneath that. They might be, very inexpensive. They might be rough. They might be, there's so many different wonderful permutations. But several different kinds of metal and wood and ceramic, all those were common in the 18th century.
What was the role of Catholicism in 18th century America or pre-America?
There's a certain quantity of that, and it's certainly happening, or sort of, let's say it concentrated or focused in spots like Maryland that were colonies that were set up, and that's where the focus of Catholicism is going on. I'm not sure about some of the other places and where there's some other focuses. Probably some other places in the colonies that were more popular for that, and beyond I don't know how to answer the question beyond that, except that it certainly was an important part of what's happening in North America in the time period.
I'm going to do a few more donations, then we'll probably do like a rapid fire round, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so John Little, thank you. You've ruined me on other coffee, John. # nutmeg on my nutmeg. Yeah, I actually had some today. It's delicious. Nancy Morgan, thank you. Tesseract 14 again, thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you.
that. No more questions from me. I just like to say how much I appreciate what you do on
Thank
this
you.
channel, how effectively you keep history alive. We appreciate your support. Sarge Tech, I believe.
Yeah.
That's how you say it. Thank you. Hi, John. Do you know anyone who has an old sourdough starter that is years and years old? My current starter is 4 years old, and his name is Herman.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there with Herman. That's popular. Was there any others?
Yeah, one more.
Okay.
Teddy the Fourth. Question for the whole crew. What would your 18th century profession probably have been? What would your dream 18th century job have been? So thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. We'll start with you, John.
First I want to touch on the sourdough starter.
Yeah. Sorry.
Good, interesting question, and kind of picking and choosing about what's going on there with that. I think it's one of those topics that is a little trickier to answer. It seems like if we take our modern sensibilities or modern knowledge and we push it backwards, we come up with one answer. But when we dig into the 18th century, trying to come up with the answer for what's happening with sourdough, it comes up a little different. And so there's definitely this old dough technique, this leaven technique, which is letting old dough kind of do its own thing, and then from one batch, you'd bring that and you'd use that in the next batch, and you'd take off a little piece and you'd save that for the next batch. So that's what's really kind of where sourdough is what is similar to a sourdough in the 18th century. Wild yeast, they didn't know what was going on with the yeast, so they were still starting that process with a barm yeast that came from beer.
Your dream job.
Dream job. What my dream job I think it might be and the dream job in the 18th century are two different things. I would love to do some cool 18th century sailing, but I don't know if I'd want to be my job throughout the 18th century. That is a hard life. What do you think, Aaron?
Well, I'm trying to think of stuff that we've covered. I'd probably just be a farmer, and then
really?
Yeah, smoke my pipe in the evening.
You wouldn't want to be a musician or?
No, not really. I don't know if it was as respected then as it is now.
Oh, it
to be a
undoubtedly wasn't.
Musician.
But when did you want to be respected?
When did I?
Yeah. Do you want to be respected today?
Yeah. I guess. I mean, I think blacksmithing is pretty cool. Maybe something like that. I've always found that.
He wants to be a craftsman.
Yeah.
What do you think, Kyle?
Town crier. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'd probably be more of a long hunter or something like that. Guy who got the furs for money. Because I love going outside.
Sounds like a tough job, too.
Well,
But if you like to be out in the woods and being stinky and not having enough food and...
Yeah, that
Sounds
interview with
awesome.
Simeon, I was like, man, I don't know about that.
Exactly. I don't know if I want to go there.
All right, I think that's it for, well, let me triple check donations. One more, and then we'll get into the rapid fire.
Rapid
and then
fire.
We'll call it good. Ann Meredith, have you had your DNA checked related to any kings or knaves? Have you ever done that?
No.
Yeah, same.
No. I'm trying to keep my DNA to myself.
That's fair. That's
But Lily, who has sent me a lot of emails, she's done some ancestor research stuff, and there's some pretty amazing stuff there.
About you?
Yeah. You know, like the transported convict who stole the chickens and the ducks.
That was you?
Yeah,
You did that?
that was me. Well, not me, but
Technically.
somebody back
No, just-
there. You know, and
I was going to say, can your employees take a crack at whether you were a knave or a king
Nope.
descent? Darn it.
You said that you don't vouch for what that person did. For the theft of
that's
the
true.
animals.
That's
Okay.
true. I didn't have anything to do with that. It happened before I was around. So
All right. Well, let's do some rapid fires, and then let's
All right.
get out of here.
Here we go. What was the most commonly played musical instrument?
Too slow.
German flute. Next.
Do you have any plans to make a basket making video?
Nope.
Were shellfish eaten by the wealthy?
But we
or-
do have a basket making video. Look for the Gary Carroll video.
That's so rude.
Go
Don't
ahead.
interrupt him.
Sorry.
That's shellfish.
Shellfish?
Were shellfish eaten by the wealthy, or was it a poor person's food?
It was both. Shellfish was very common, and lobster was eaten by very, very poor folks and rich folks alike.
Do we have an Instagram?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll post it.
Townsends _official, and sometimes I play around on 18th Century Cooking.
Do you ever get a day off, or do you prefer to work all the time?
I'm always working. Whether it's a day off or not, I'm still working. Get real. Even if I'm not working, I'm working. I can't leave it alone.
Why is a Dutch oven called a Dutch oven?
Made by the Dutch. The technique was a Dutch technique.
What was the most common food for wealthy people?
Common food for wealthy people. I don't know.
The recipe that's coming out Monday. I
Yeah,
would
Monday's
say.
recipe. No. No.
That's so good.
It is going to be good.
Any more shared cooking videos with Ivy in the future?
Probably.
No, she's a real
Probably.
troublemaker. She probably isn't. I don't know. I don't have any planned. That doesn't mean it won't happen.
And last but not least, what was the most challenging video ever to make?
What do you think, Aaron? You're probably as
Challenging video to make.
anyone with Michael Dragoon.
Oh! Wow.
Yeah, he doesn't help with the focus points. That's for
Well,
sure. He likes to sway.
but he's always
No,
a
Michael's
joy.
blast.
Always
I
a
love
joy
working
to have in the
with
kitchen.
Michael. Oh yeah, hardest video we've done, most difficult.
Frank says Maggie.
Well, that wasn't difficult. I didn't have to be in front of the camera. That made it easy.
Someone said dugout canoe. That was actually really smooth.
Yeah.
When I look back on it,
A lot
the
of
work on it,
planning
the-
went
yeah.
into that, so got a lot of great folks working on it.
We all know what the answer is. Probably the movie, but
Yeah. So we're not going to bring that one up.
let's wrap it up, John.
Any more? Is that
That's
it?
it.
Is that the
That's
last
it.
one?
That
Shoo! Thank you so much. Rick and Hillary, if you're out there, thank you for watching. Mom is probably out there. Thank you. Frank obviously is there, and probably so is Carol. And all you folks that are there week after week. Sometimes you show up in Super Chat, or you're in the chat. Some of you are you're watching and you don't have a way to be in the chat. You're watching it on your telephone. Thank you for being there, watching our videos. It's important that you're here. It helps me know what it is. And I can't, it's like, you're where all this stuff comes from, right? All these great questions, all this wonderful content. I enjoy it so much. So I really want to thank you for all your amazing support. You come and you purchase mugs, or you are on Super Chat, or you just watch our videos. All of that's important. Thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for watching today.